Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to do a little bit more on my Synology NAS, but I'm going to start with a little story. I was working for this little startup, okay, and we're going to call this guy Tom. And Tom had an idea, and he went away and he chatted to his friends, and a couple of other guys joined. And they weren't all called Tom. Tom, Tim, and Tam. And he had an idea, and they were all pretty technical guys, and they set about working. Now, as they started working on this business idea, which was a good idea, they started with their own personal laptops. Okay, so they were all MacBook users, and they all had their own laptop. It wasn't a business right now. It was Tom with an idea and his friend Tim and Tam, and they sat down, and maybe I should give them better names like Bob and Alice, and then we'll start talking about security keys and all that stuff. No, they just had regular user computers, personal computers, and there's nothing wrong with a MacBook. It's perfectly acceptable for a business environment. But if you look at your MacBook, you probably set it up something like this. You have your username. You may even be part of an iCloud family, or your Apple name. And you created users. You probably only created one user, and it was probably an admin, like I am, which surprises me actually. I didn't realize it was an admin account that I had. You probably just had that one account, Tom, and that was it. You created that account when you first set up the laptop, and you never thought anything about it. And Tim and Tam did the same thing. Now, sharing files between them, because they're all Apple devices, that's not too bad. We've all got AirPlay. We can share files between us, no problem. We do think we've got the idea for a business now, and we're going to spend some time. We're going to come up with a company name. Tom and his friends, they registered a legal entity, and they bought a domain, and they can get emails to that domain. Delete that one. That's better, isn't it? They are able to send emails as a corporate account, and they've got Tim at What the Flash, and Tom at What the Flash, and Tam at What the Flash, and that's fine. Now, when they set out, they actually went to Google Workspaces or whatever it's called, and they set up a Google domain, or they set up a Google Workspace, I should say. And they registered their email address and their domain against that workspace, which meant they all got file space. They got a space they can work on. They've got Google Docs, they've got Google, whatever else is available in there. So they've got their email address, which to the rest of the world seems like they've got they have got their own private domain name, their own private email addresses, but Google's doing all the work for them. And the files are all saved in this Google Drive, and hey, happy days. But things are looking good. Okay, so they hire some more people. The business is starting to get better, and now those people get a laptop. And for now, we're just going to call them Tim and Tom and Tam again. And they all get added to the Google Workspace, and the way it works is it's quite cheap. It's like $4 or $5 a month per user. I think you get like 5 users for free or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Well, not for free. You pay a price, and that unlocks some user accounts, and then you can just grow them as you need them as a one at a time. You don't need to go away and buy, like 500 new licenses or something. So as the company grew, things look better. There's more and more people. But the problem was, they started to notice that keeping track of all of their files, it was getting a little bit tricky. Now, Google Workspace does come with Google Drive, so they had a place to put their files, and it's a collaborative, or it enables collaborative working, so you can all work on the same file. It does work. But this is a business idea that they thought was going to change the world, and it might well change the world. They didn't really want Google to know everything about their business, and I think that's fair enough, to be honest. So they went away and they bought a NAS. And this NAS, we're going to call it a Synology NAS. And we will move that word down if we can figure out how to do that, which we can't, it seems. Well, we're deleting that one because that's annoying me. Let's get a better NAS. a NAS that's less annoying. In fact, they might even have a Synology. Oh, there you go. It's a nice NAS, isn't it? It's really nice, that one. In fact, it was quite similar to the one they had, a nice big massive rack mounted one. So they went away and they bought a NAS. And the way they managed that NAS was similar to how I'm currently managing mine at the moment. So if I go into control panel and users and groups, we'll see I have some users, except they had Tim and Tam and Tom and all of their friends that unfortunately in this example were all called the same name. So they had, Tim 2 and Tom 2, you know what I mean. It sort of worked, except they needed another NAS for some reason, and I don't exactly know the reason for that because it's happened before me. So they had another NAS, and what they went away and did was set all of those users up again. And when you set up a user and a file share, a home folder and all that kind of stuff, you give them a username and password and you tell them how to connect to it. Well, some users were being told to connect to NAS 1 and, I'd give them a number, I suppose. And some were being told to connect to NAS 02. And somebody, one of the three founders, at some point, once a month, maybe it started out once a week, or I don't really know, but once a month, once a quarter, they would go in there and they would copy all those files because they didn't really know how the Synology NAS worked. Now, there's a lot of these things that Synology could have done for them, the NAS could have done for them, the DSM operating system, but they didn't know that. And that's fine. They're here, they're working on the next great thing, something that they thought was so big and powerful and important that they didn't even want Google to know about it, which is why they moved their documents away from Google. Now, interestingly, the product they were building, they left inside AWS, so I guess that means they perhaps trusted AWS more. I'm not entirely sure about that. Or maybe the product was, I don't know how. I never saw the actual product itself or the code of the product. So as this lot got bigger and bigger, and what we'll do is we will start calling this, we'll bunch these up, okay, and we'll get rid of their names, and we will call this collection of them operations. We'll delete that in a second, get rid of you, and we shall bunch them up with your friend as well, and we shall group them, and then we can use that to represent groups of people rather than lots of people called Tim and Tom and Tam. Okay, so then there would have been, I don't know, four teams or something by then. There was an ops team, there was a marketing team, or it might have had a better name than that. I think it was go to market or something. There was, of course, customer success, which is customer services for the rest of the world, and kind of like inside sales, and most important team of all, engineers or developers, data scientists, all that kind of stuff. At least they thought they were the most important, and they kind of probably were. So these groups, they got bigger and bigger, and we'll say there were a lot more than 3 people in each group by this point. At some point, they decided they wanted to bring in an IT person to help them figure out the situation that they'd got themselves into. The problem they got themselves into was when it started, it was Tom or Tim or Tam. One of those guys would set up the basic structure of the organization. It was their job to set everyone else up, and they were doing a great job, except they're trying to build a business here. It did go on to be a big business, and I'm not going to say the name because that's not really the point of this video. One of these founders took that responsibility, the responsibility for creating users, giving them some space on a NAS, sometimes creating them on both NASs for whatever reason, sometimes, setting up mailboxes, setting up aliases, setting up mail flows, all of the kind of things that need to be done, okay? And don't forget that when they started, they had one NAS, and I don't know if it sort of filled up or it was starting to get slow, but at some point they got a second NAS. And the thing they did initially was if they created a user in one NAS, they would then manually create them in the second NAS. Now, at some point, one of the hires they made, they decided to make that person responsible for it. And that person took it on with some gusto and got on with it. And then they hired someone and it was their responsibility, and, so on and so on. So eventually, they're up to about 50 employees by now. Someone is looking after this, or maybe more than one person is looking after this, except some users live on this one, on NAS 1, and some users live on NAS 2. It gets a bit more complicated than that though, because it wasn't just all the engineers and customer success people were on this one and ops and go-to-market were on the other one. No, some of the engineers were on NAS 1 and some were on NAS 2, and the same with all of the other groups of users. The founders were probably on both of the NASs, and some of the other users, especially the earlier ones, would have been on both of the NASs as well. Now, it started to get a little bit complicated for lots of reasons, not just this reason. They decided to hire the IT consultant, which I've put here. Now, that IT consultant happened to be me, and when I came in, I'd never actually seen a NAS before. Well, no, that's definitely wrong. I'd never seen a Synology NAS before. I'd seen enterprise-grade network attached storage, but I'd never seen a Synology NAS before. I'd never looked at one. I'd never seen DSM. I was asked to have a look at it, help them figure out what the problem was. They were describing the problem to me, but they were unable to show me the problem. Because everyone that tried to describe it to me, it turned out they had accounts on more than one NAS at the same time. I was there for a little while, there was a lot of other things to fix, and it was only when I was working with some of the other people, some of the users that were not like management type people, that I started to say, oh right, oh you can't access that file, oh right, when you try to save that file you don't have permission to save in that folder, or if they send you the file you can only read it, you can download it, you can upload it to your own space but you can't upload it back again, or maybe your space is full, or maybe that team's space is full. You know, I started to see the problem, and I'd also had a bit of time to try and understand or to learn my way around the DSM. So at this point, what we had was, is that still logged in? Yeah. Some people had come, some people had gone. We had a list of users in the DSM. In DSM 1, it was maybe 75 people long, and DSM 2, maybe, I don't know, 50 or 70 people or something. And then the Google account as well, that in itself, I don't know, that had like 100 users in it. So my first task was to figure out, how do I deal with these users? How do we come around to managing this a little bit better? And one of the things we did was we looked at introducing a directory service. Now, at the time, we actually introduced another directory service before coming back to the DSM and looking at things like the LDAP service. Okay, so if we go inside my DSM, my disk station, sorry, package center, and we search for LDAP. One of the benefits of having an LDAP server, especially when you've got something like this where you've got multiple NASs, they were also thinking about a third and a fourth NAS. They were looking at, this was in our London office, they were looking at opening an office in Boston, I think it was, and Singapore. And they wanted to have some more NAS devices there for, you know, whatever reasons they were using them. So one of the ways that we could resolve that was to use LDAP server. Now the LDAP server is a little bit, I'm going to say it's a little bit clunky, like you have to create an LDAP server and then register the device to the LDAP server for some reason, which is a bit weird. Now the benefits of using like an LDAP server, let's see if we can get a nice picture of an LDAP server. Does actually look like, oh, it's a little QNAP version this. Basically the right picture. The benefits of using an LDAP server is that we would have one source of truth for our users. Okay, and then the DSM, this could run the LDAP server. But essentially, it's the same thing. A user wants to write or read a location, like read a team folder or even their own personal folder. That user has to exist in the original format. They had to exist inside the NAS device. If they didn't, if this person shared them a file but they existed on this one, then this person couldn't see the file unless it was emailed to them. It was definitely clunky. What we could do is by using an LDAP server, we could get this user to ask for permission to write to it. It will check the LDAP server, which in our situation was running on the NAS, and if it was, then they could write to it. Now, these users are all in the LDAP as well. They're in the directory as well. What we can do with multiple NASs is we can make this NAS ask this NAS about its LDAP database. So when this person says, oh, I want to write to this file, I am part of the development team, or the marketing team have given me permission to upload some new screenshots from my development work, check the LDAP server. Yes, you do have permission. Yes, you can write to it. if a user moves over to Singapore for business or for relocation or Boston or something, the LDAP server in those locations can come back and check. This is the IT consultant hero of the day, of course. Doesn't actually need to be a picture of that person, I suppose. Let's just move these over here. I'm sure I made that into a group. I did make it into a group. When we went over to our first Synology NAS, we set up an LDAP service. Now, the LDAP service, when it first sets up, it doesn't, at least it didn't, it may have changed, it doesn't take account of all those users that already existed. So we had to create them again, which was a bit annoying. Let's have a look in there. So let's enable the LDAP server, and we need a fully qualified domain name. So this is borg2.flash.local. Password. So this is the password for joining the LDAP server, for getting permission to join it. And then we get the choice, do we want this to be the provider or the consumer? Now the provider's like top of the tree, I suppose. So if you can see, can we see the icon? Do we have a directory? So if we look at this setting here as a provider service, this is like the provider. And then these things are consumers, okay? So these are other LDAP servers, okay? So one of them is the boss. One of them, if you want to create a new user, or if you want to create a new user group or change the permissions in a group, you would do that at the boss level. And then all of the other ones would get it. So in this situation, if we made NAS01 the boss, and a change happened on here, if we created a user or deleted a user or changed the user's password, that would be sent out to the other NASs. So we could have NAS 2 and 3 and 4, etc. Right, okay, so let's go back to this. Okay, so we don't have that information yet. Let's have a look in connection settings. We will use encrypted connections, and I will kick someone off if they've been idle for 10 minutes or something. Let's go apply. You can hear the NAS clunking away. Okay, so we can actually see this structure of this is quite important. We'll use it again later. So it is quite an important thing, and it's nice that it's there for us to see. What we're going to do is we're going to create a database full of users. Now, in this case, by the time the IT consultant was looking at this, there were over 50 users, and probably by the time it was in place, it was probably like 75, 80 users. So we don't want to lose all of that information. So the database of users that the LDAP server creates, we definitely want to back it up. So we can tell it to back it up somewhere. Destination, we'll drop it in the shared folder for now. It does have passwords, they are hashed. We wouldn't normally keep it in the shared folder, so we'll clear that up a little bit later on. And then we'll tell it to back up, let's say once a day at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no one in the office at that sort of time. Although I suppose we would have to figure out what we would deal with, how we would deal with different time zones, but let's come back to that later. And in fact, actually, we only need to back up the main one. We don't need to back up the like local versions anyway, so let's okay that. We'll create some users in a second. We've got users, administrators, clients, consumers, operators. Yep, we'll come back to that one later. Google Workspace SSO, I don't remember this. Formerly G Suite. Oh yeah, that's what Google Workspace was called, G Suite. Oh, cool. So you could use this as an LDAP server for your Google Workspace domain. Okay, so let's go to users. Let's create a user. Interestingly, you might think, or you might hope, that we would be able to import our users. So if I look back inside the control panel, I have users. I mean, I have, okay, this is the admin account that I'm logged in with. The guest is deactivated, the admin is deactivated, but I do have another user. That's my SMB share. That it's not these, but it is my SMB share. You might think that this would import it, but it doesn't. It doesn't import it. So let's go to import users. No. What we'll do is we will create a user, and I shall call this one What the Flash. That's their name. Their description is the... Okay, disallow user to change password. Yeah, I don't want them to do that for now. Let's go next. They'll go into the user group. That's fine. Don't care about any of that stuff. I also need to create an admin user. Now, an admin user is someone that has access to the administration of the DSM device, because we're going to register the DSM to itself in a moment. So let's create an admin. So I'm going to call this admin David, and this one will go into the admins. I don't care about that stuff. Groups we'll come back to, we'll figure that stuff out later. Now, if we go back into our control panel and in domain and LDAP, so let's join a domain, auto detect, we're going to say it is a LDAP, server address is the local host, DNS server, yeah, I think that's fine. The bind DN or LDAP account. Okay, so the bind DN, we go back into here. It's this one. Sorry, I couldn't remember what I was doing then. I'm looking at it like, oh, I don't know what to do. The password was my password. Sorry, not mine. It was the one that I've already forgotten in here. So what I might do is just do it again. Okay. That password, yeah, I already put that in. The base DN, now the base DN is also in here. This means it's found it itself. Update user group list, minutes, okay, so every 1000 minutes it will update that. And then we should be able to go next. Okay, check, 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 check. Okay, I mean, it's joining itself to itself, so this bit should work fine. That's all fine. Okay, great. Okay, and then we can see we've got some LDAP users and some LDAP groups. What we've done now in our picture is we have set up this one. So if we create users in here, we can now send them to our other Synology NASs. What we should do is let's go back into groups. Create a group. Let's call this group operations, and that's our operations team. And if we have a look at that, edit members, add, and we will say what flash is allowed in there. So now if I look at my users, what flash, let's have a look at edit, user groups. They're now in this group and they're in this group. Does it make any sense? Not yet. Maybe not. So let's go back into the control panel and users and groups. And we want to look at permissions. If I can find application privileges. Applications, it's allowed in Synology Drive. It will have some home space. We need a Teams folder. We need a team folder, that's why. So let's go to save. Just save that for now. We'll go back into shared folders. Let's create one. This is ops team. Enable additional. We don't want to. I'm going to skip the encryption of that folder. And what we want to do is come down here. No, we don't. We want to go to LDAP groups, and we want to say anyone in there has got read-write access to it. Okay, apply. This could be where we keep our like HR data, for example. Okay, so let's close that. Right. Okay, so now that user, someone in operations, now has a share on this NAS. But let's say they are getting sent out to Singapore, let's say. So now I have another NAS over here. Now it's actually my main NAS, so I don't really want to play with it too much. But let's go into control panel and let's have a look at my users and groups. I've got a few more users and groups on there. And let's have a look at domain and LDAP. This is not currently in an LDAP directory. So let's go to join, and we want an LDAP, and we want DNS server is there. Okay, bind. Okay, so again, we need that information from here. So this is our bind DN. Right, the password. Yes, it is encrypted. We need the base DN as well. There's this one, but it might be able to find that itself, hopefully. So let's have a look. Great. Standard profile. We don't need those other things there. We didn't do anything else there. So let's say everything passed. Join in that directory. Taking a little bit of time as they check which one of them is Tom's friend and which one of them is Tam's friend. Okay, so it all looks good. And if we have a look at our LDAP users, you can see we have What the Flash at BullCube02, and our LDAP groups, we have this group. So in here, again, we can go in and we can create a shared folder. So shared files, we've already got one here. Let's just use this one. If we edit that, who's got access to it? They can read, write. But anyway, we'll go to our LDAP users, LDAP groups, sorry. And we say anyone inside group ops also has read-write access to it. Save. What we've done there is we've said that when we created a user here, they've got access to, we've created a user and some groups, and we've created them on our primary NAS, our boss NAS, our boss LDAP server. If we want that user to exist in more than one place and have access to files or folders in more than one place, we can connect those other places into our LDAP server. Making a change here on our primary one, we create a new user, which we shall call Operations Manager. I don't know what a manager is. A monger. And it's another LDAP user, just so that I can find them later when I want to clean this all up. Don't change password. Next. Put them in group ops. Next. Don't care about that stuff. Yep, done. So our groups, if we have a look at this, we have the two members in there. This is on our primary NAS, the boss NAS. And then if we have a look at this one, let's have a look at LDAP users. So LDAP groups, this has read-write access to it. LDAP users, what the flash, okay, we're there. So it will update every now and then. We just need to speed it up a little bit at the moment. Okay, so we can manually update it. So let's go back into shared folder, into that shared file. Let's edit it. Permissions. Okay, so that group again, the LDAP group, has read and write access to it. And the LDAP users, which include this guy and this guy, or this girl and this girl, or whatever, they also have read and write access to it because they are given access to it by being in this group, and this group has permission to this share. Now this is quite a simplified version of this, but you imagine we had hundreds of users. They have 200 users, at least 200, individual my spaces, my shares, my individual drives, plus 40 team drives, because you might have a drive that's just for the HR people. You might have a drive that's just for production, for a project. You might have a drive that's, if you were going through Series A or Series B and you had to prepare quite a lot of material as part of your pack that you're giving to some people, and you maybe don't want the rest of the world to know that that's something you're working on. Tom, Tam and Tim may have a secret folder, secret to you, me and the IT admin who can see everything anyway. These things build up. You have a lot of places all of a sudden. And then if you go ahead and you start talking about sticking a file server out in a NAS, out in Boston or Singapore or Leeds, needs in the UK. Using an LDAP service is one way we could help manage that and make things much easier for this IT consultant, and hopefully at some point when they get a team of IT people that will probably live in operations as they are just overhead, looking after this stuff will become easy. Also, if this person here leaves, we can go in and we can say all of that data that belonged to What the Flash, let's just give that to the operations manager. Let's migrate their data over to that person. If we want to change their password, stop them from accessing it, but we still have access to it, we could do that. If we want to change their password because they think someone else has seen it that shouldn't see it, we can do that. And we could allow them to do it as well. That's also fine. We could also look at binding the Macs and the Linux laptops to an LDAP server. And that's possible. Maybe we could look at that in another video if that's something that people are interested in. So having one collection of users across multiple devices, this is why we have LDAP servers. This is why businesses have been relying on LDAP and other directory services like Active Directory or Jump Cloud for a long time now. It just makes it much easier to sort of manage these things when you're managing it across more than one device. And that's basically the problem that we came in to fix, or I came in to fix when I joined, not their real names, Tom, Tim and Tam. If you happen to know 3 founders, I didn't work for them because that isn't their real name. We went in, we fixed it, cleaned it all up, had a very happy NAS environment. Well, I don't know if it was happy, I never asked it, but I assumed the NAS, the Synology devices were all happy. If you want to know more about binding like your MacBook or a Linux laptop to an LDAP server, let me know. I could definitely have a look at doing that. Anything else you want to know about on a Synology NAS, let me know and that'll give me an idea on what sort of things to make in an upcoming video or future videos or whatever. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Just completely different format today with a whole draw.io diagrams going on there. I hope you found something useful or a little bit of enjoyment or whatever, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.